welcome to Overdrive. I'm Soini Dutt. Kawasaki has given the Ninja 650 another upgrade. In fact, with the 2020 upgrade, the motorcycle had become a lot more leaner and meaner. And now with the 2023 upgrade, the motorcycle tends to be a lot more safer. But does that make it a complete package? Rohit will tell us more.
Let's begin with a backstory. This area is called Lavasa, one of the most favorite destinations for motorcyclists in Pune, the district where Kawasaki India assembles their motorcycles. The first big bike that they assembled in Pune was the Ninja 650, a motorcycle that taught me never to buy vehicles without test riding them. That was back in 2011. I bought that bike looking at the spec sheet, and that was instant regret. I brought that motorcycle to these very roads to run it in, to try and fall in love with it. But we just didn't click. It almost felt like a failed arranged marriage. Probably I wasn't a good enough rider. But many agreed that that motorcycle lacked front-end feel, the brakes felt wooden, and it was probably the most lethargic, full-fed motorcycle of that time. Years have passed, the roads have clearly degraded, but the Ninja 650, oh, that's grown. And how? It's become such a brilliant motorcycle now. Let's take a look. Simply look at the confidence with which she enters these corners. I remember how the 2011 model had me scared about washing out the front end under braking or not being able to flick from one side to another for the switchbacks. Especially this particular corner. It always felt a bit tricky, it felt a bit skittish with all this patchwork and mid-corner undulations. But this new 650 is not just sharper than all the previous Ninja 650s, it's also entering these corners with a lot more authority. And what it has up its sleeve, a new trick, is traction control, which on roads like these, which are a bit gravelly and now riddled with potholes, it gives it a good safety net. That adds to that confidence. As for the traction control, you get 3 levels of adjustability. A very alert level 2, a mild level 1, or no traction control at all. Even on level 2 of the traction control system, it doesn't feel too intrusive, unless of course you are coming over a speed hump or riding on a rumble strip. That is where you can feel the traction control working. You can also feel it in the way it delivers power or cuts power. Otherwise, when you are riding, sport riding, going around twisties, it doesn't feel intrusive at all. Even on the ruts and joints, it's not too overbearing. So it doesn't really kill the riding fun. And that's a very good thing. In fact, I think traction control was the only missing piece of the puzzle on the Ninja 650. And now with the inclusion of it, I think the package seems complete. Which means that this generation of the Ninja 650, which originally debuted in 2020, now has all new age equipment. The safety net of ABS and traction control, a more evocative styling, a compact and sharp design inspired from the ZX6R, a lighter construction which makes this motorcycle only weigh 196 kilos with all its fluids topped up, the sheen of a 4.3-inch TFT full-color display, and the added convenience of the Kawasaki Rideology app. Some would wish for upside-down forks too, but these 41mm conventional units, along with the near horizontal rear monoshock, do a fine job of tackling our poor road conditions without bottoming out, and at the same time maintain a taut feeling through the bends. So what you essentially get is a bike that feels sporty around the bends but feels as easy to maneuver in the city as a street bike, and on the highway it transforms into a comfortable sport tourer. Even the brakes see a vast improvement over all the previous generations of the Ninja 650. Of course, the front lever feel, it's a bit too spongy for my liking, but the bite is quite predictable, it's quite progressive, and that is what I like. Also, what you get is much better engine braking than before. So, in terms of the overall braking, in terms of the overall deceleration, it feels a lot more confident, whether you're riding around the twisties or even on the highway. The 649cc parallel twin from Kawasaki is one of the sweetest middleweight engines that you can bet your money on. And it isn't hard to see why it does duty in everything from this Ninja to a street naked, an adventure tourer, and even a cruiser. Now in terms of the power delivery, how the power feels to you as a rider, it slots in between the Ninja 400 and the big ZX6R. Of course, compared to the 400 or the 6R, this is actually more comfortable because it gives you a lot more room. So if you are someone like me with a larger frame, it will give you more room to move around compared to a Ninja 400. But at the same time, it doesn't feel as big as the ZX6R, which may or may not be to someone's liking. At the same time, it doesn't feel as aggressive, as committed as the 6R. The engine also doesn't heat up too much, and even bumper-to-bumper traffic jams don't worry it. On the highway, the engine does get a bit buzzy in the 4 to 5,000 RPM range, which isn't a deal breaker, but it compounds into another problem because the only thing Kawasaki has still not improved on this bike is the quality of the plastics. I'm really impressed with how the Ninja 650 has shaped up after all these years. I think it's the perfect package for anyone who wants to upgrade to their first big bike. At the same time, that engine has enough poke, there's enough confidence in those riding dynamics to even keep seasoned riders from growing out of it. In fact, if I had to pick one bike to do it all from the current crop of 650s, it would be the Ninja. And I would take it even over the Versix 650, the one that has a longer travel suspension. And that, coming from me, after the kind of experience that I've had with the 2011 Ninja 650, that says a lot. That's how good the new 650 is. Go give it a try.
Well, you heard what Rohit had to say about the Kawasaki Ninja 650, but you can let us know what you think of this motorcycle in our comment section on our YouTube channel. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we pit the Citroen C3 against the Tata Punch. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. We've reached a point now where a tight budget is no longer a reason to deprive yourself of all the bragging rights that come with owning an SUV. In this regard, the Tata Punch has been our pick, but now we're wondering whether the Citroen C3 can change our mind with its unique perspective on this matter.
We've now reached a point where having a tight budget is no longer reason enough to deprive you of all the bragging rights that come with owning an SUV. Now the Tata Punch has been a pick in this regard if you have less than 10 lakhs to spare, but can the Citroen C3, which brings a new take on this segment, make a difference? Now Citroen insists on calling the C3 a hatch, but it can more than hold its own against the clearly SUV-inspired Tata Punch with its added 154mm of length. And it's a handsome car with Citroen doing a great job of distilling its family face onto this more affordable package. The Punch also draws inspiration from the Harrier and Safari with its split headlamp look and the two-step grille arrangement. But both use contrasting colors to add more presence, but the Punch is beefed up further with more cladding. The Punch has a larger boot at 366 litres against the 315 litres of the C3, but both have quite high load lips, although the Citroen does carve out a flatter, more usable space. Now with the Punch you get a single 1.2 litre naturally aspirated 3-cylinder petrol engine which makes 86 PS and 113 Nm. Now in isolation that's not too bad, but the C3 will also give you the turbo option that we'll come to eventually. But yeah, and this motor, it's like one of the typical Tata petrol engines that we've experienced in recent memory. So it's not the most refined, so when you start off there's noticeable vibrations coming through the steering wheel and through the pedals. But once you do get moving, you realize that the engine is quite drivable. Of course, that's when you're up and running, like we are right now. So there is a wide linear power band. So while in terms of outright pace, it's nowhere close to the C3 Turbo, it's perfectly usable in the kind of conditions you will drive the Punch in. So like you can see, we're just at about 2000 RPM ambling along on these hilly roads, which will translate into you sort of ambling along in traffic quite easily. Of course, overtaking performance is lacking, which means that you will have to, say, downshift a gear or two to get to the kind of performance that you need to make overtakes and so on. And when you start using the gear lever, it's a 5-speed manual. You also get an AMT with the Punch, which you don't with the C3. You notice that the gear shifts there are quite nice. They're light. The gear lever is light, precise, the throws aren't too long. More importantly, the clutch is progressive. It's got a well-defined bite point. So changing gears is not really that much of a hassle. Now we'll get to what is probably the best part of the Punch, the way it rides and handles. Now the steering is light, it's like how you would expect a city car to be, which means that it'll be again very easy to use in traffic or parking, and it weighs up naturally. I mean, it will not feel some in that sense when you are going a bit harder, putting in more lock, but it's perfectly usable and works very well with the ride and handling character of this micro SUV, if you will. Because the Punch, when you say drive over bad patches like we are right now, it takes them really well. So you'd barely feel any of it. The suspension is very well damped, so very little of it actually filters into the cabin. There's no harsh bumps or jarring sensations coming through to you. In that sense, the Punch is quite an easy car to drive. It's very easy to get used to, and if you are of an enthusiastic bent, it's the better handler of the two here by a small margin. In our real world mileage testing, we got 16.7 kilometers per litre in the city and 19.7 on the highway with the Punch. The C3 is a much quicker car, but this costs in terms of efficiency, with us managing 11.6 in the city and 16.15 on the highway. Now this is good for a small turbo, but naturally aspirated rivals at this price point are far more frugal. Now you can get the C3 in two engine options, unlike the one that you have in the Punch. So you have a very similar 1.2 litre naturally aspirated 3-cylinder petrol, or what we're driving right now, 1.2 litre turbo petrol, again 3-cylinder. And this motor, this PureTech motor, really is the highlight of the Citroen C3's driving experience, at least in our books, because this turbo petrol, again, it's genuinely impressive in the way it delivers its performance. So to start with, it's quiet, refined. There are not too many stray vibrations. You barely realize that it's a 3-cylinder to begin with. None of those, irritating attributes are there in this motor. It starts off quite cleanly. It's got good low-end torque, unlike the motor in the Punch. Now turbo lag itself is very well controlled, so you have that clean, wide linear power band, which makes it again very drivable in the city. Top that, you have quite a good amount of performance with the 110 PS and 190 Newton meters. And as you can see from our 0 to 100 times and our in-gear acceleration times, this C3 will keep up with some much bigger SUVs just in terms of its outright pace. Now the C3, in terms of the way it rides, it can't quite match the softness that the Punch has, especially at low speeds. So it's a bit more European in that regard typically. So you feel the bumps, those typical Indian bumps, potholes, cracks on the road, ditches, a bit more, especially at low speeds in the C3. And at high speeds, there's really not much to choose between the two cars in terms of the way they ride. Now again, the way they handle is also quite similar. We like the steering in the C3 a bit more because at least we personally think it weighs up a bit more naturally as speeds rise, but the difference is marginal. And in terms of handling, the rest of the car, again, it feels solid, it feels substantial, it will stay true to its line largely, so there are no surprises. And over a set of corners, much like the Punch, there's some enjoyment to be had. So if you like driving, then both cars here do have something to offer for you.
Back here with us at Overdrive. Now, when it comes to creature comforts, the bigger the list, the happier we are as consumers. So here's what the Tata Punch and the Citroen C3 have to offer.
Now step into the C3 from the Punch and immediately you get the sense that this is a larger car, and that's down to these vibrant colors and textures, again like in the Punch, that have been used here. But like in the Punch, the quality of plastics is about what you would expect at this price point. They're mostly hard and scratchy, but well textured again. So they work smartly, like Tata Motors, to give you an enhanced sense of quality, even though the materials themselves aren't quite up there. The seats feel a bit wider, again well bolstered, which again adds to that sense of space, along with these larger windows, this larger windscreen. So in terms of outright space, yes, the C3 has a slight edge over the Punch. But look at the C3 in terms of the features list and you realize that this is going to be the deciding factor really between choosing between the two cars here. The absence of features is quite stark here. For example, you get manually operated mirrors. You don't get any of the high-tech features, for example, cruise control, auto headlamps and wipers. You don't get any of that. In fact, the kind of cost cutting that's gone on here is quite stark. For example, you don't get a dead pedal, and if you want to start the car, you don't need to press the clutch. That safety feature that you get in many cars, almost all cars nowadays, isn't there. Now, once you step inside the Punch, you can't miss that typical door thud that you expect in a Tata, that strong build. And when you sit inside, you notice that the Punch gives you just that bit more of that SUV sort of feeling in terms of the way it's designed mainly. For example, these horizontal layers that make up the top half of the dash, they sort of lend you that sense of being in an SUV, and you realize that both the cars here are built to a price. For example, these panel gaps aren't quite, consistent here. But again, there are other touches, for example, the way this AC vent functions or the way these switches function, which are a touch more damped, a bit better feeling in terms of quality than in the C3. Now coming to how the seats feel in the Punch, you notice that the cabin doesn't feel as wide as it is in the C3, even though the Punch is a wider car, and that's largely down to those seats. They are a bit narrower than the ones in the C3. So if you are a wider adult, then maybe they aren't the best fit for you, especially with these heavily bolstered sides. Now where the Punch really scores over the C3 is in the sheer amount of gadgetry that's on board here. You get connected tech, you get Watt 3 words, navigation, you get some nice sounding Harman audio, you get climate control, you get auto headlamps and wipers, you get cruise control, and you get this partly digital instrumentation, which usually we aren't big fans of. But here at this price point, it does make a lot of sense with the sheer functions that you can control through here, a lot of information available to you quite easily. You also get drive modes, which is another big addition at this price. So yeah, in terms of features, the Punch really has it over the C3. But yes, the C3 is still the more practical car in terms of thoughtful storage spaces. Now getting into the C3 isn't as easy as in the Punch, mainly because this opening here is quite narrow and there's a high sill, and the doors don't open obviously to the 90 degrees that the ones in the Punch do. But once you're inside, there's quite a big difference in the sense of space between the two cars. You have this theatre style seating, which really helps. You sit quite high up, higher than these row of seats. The windows are large, so you get that sense that you are in a car which is quite a bit larger than the one in the Punch. But again, you notice that the middle passenger will be slightly hampered because there is a big hump here. So in terms of placing their feet, there is a problem, even though that big difference in wheelbase shows in terms of knee and leg room. The Citroen is significantly longer, and that shows. And in terms of seats, the seats themselves, they are a bit flatter than the one in the Punch. They don't feel as body hugging as the one in the Punch, which is a bit of a drawback. Now, like in the front of the C3 where safety is a big attribute, here it's a mixed bag. You do get two USB ports, which the Punch misses out on, which is a big miss. But again, the power windows are centrally mounted, so they're not that easy to reach. And the cup holders here, quite unlike the ones in the front, they're tiny, just enough for one bottle. So yeah, it's a mixed bag in terms of practicality in the back seat of the C3. So there's no dimming rear view mirror, no rear washer or wiper, no ISOFIX child seat mounts or a rear camera. You don't even need to press the clutch to start the car, which is a genuine hazard. In contrast, the Punch carries a 5-star global NCAP safety rating with all these features present. The only drawback here is the lack of ESC. Now, stepping into the Punch is a lot easier than in the C3, mainly because of these 90-degree doors that are a big talking point with this Alpha platform of Tata Motors. And the seat height too, the hip point is quite high, and this opening too is quite large, so getting in is not an issue at all. The door pockets are large too, unlike in the front, so again that's a positive. And you notice that again it's a very comfortable space to be in. Of course, in terms of knee room and leg room, the C3 has the edge because of its much longer wheelbase, but otherwise in absolute terms you have great underside support. And it's nice that you get a center armrest here, because look at this, you can place your arms at an even angle, so it's very comfortable. There's a flat floor, so if you do carry a fifth passenger. They'll be happier in the Punch than in the C3. The C3, in true Citroen fashion, brings a fresh take on an affordable family car. It's about as good as a car in this price range can get with its looks, space and driving feel. Had it been better packaged or fully lived up to its no-frills brief in terms of price, the Tata Punch would have had a tougher job. As it stands, the Punch offers more of what a new or cost-sensitive car buyer might want with its long features list, a touch more SUV character, good efficiency and competent driving dynamics.